It's a very, very warm welcome back to Matchbook's Weekend LFL Betting Podcast. So, so good to be back, and even better to be back with three of the brightest and best in the game. These guys need no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway, because if you're on the podcast, you won't be able to see them on the screen. But Mr. Drew Dinsick at the top right of the screen, creator, founder, chief executive of the Deep Dive Betting Podcast, and now of the National Broadcasting Company as well. This guy is stateside. Bet Staps Rob Pizzola, even that's a good start. Rob, his brand new Shock Jock setup. He is on board as well for the season ahead. We have Rob every week this year, which is really good. And the top tipster in Western Europe for the NFL, Mr. Fabian Sommer. Gentlemen, it's great to be back. It's really, really good to be back. It's been a decent enough off season. We're talking about vaccinations all of a sudden. Did we ever think that we'd be talking about it again this year? But Drew Dinsick, I want to just ask first, before we get into this weekend's games, we always have advised to kind of get the best of the number early in the week. However, with certain teams this year, we'll just take the Minnesota Vikings, for example. You really got that comfortable backing these guys on a Monday or Tuesday. It's a long way to sweat out when guys are getting daily COVID tests.
Yeah, no, I think I've prepared myself for the fact that over the course of the season, I'm going to take some losses solely on the basis of just bad luck with respect to who gets COVID. And I will prepare myself for that. On the flip side, I will also have some good breaks. And I don't know that you can necessarily single out certain teams and say, well, the likes of the Vikings, likes of the Ravens, because they have quarterbacks who have swirling questions about their vaccination status. I don't know that you can put them in a specific category relative to some other teams if the spot is right, if the number is going to move. So there will be times I'll back those teams early. And I'll just have to hold my breath and, recognize that the coin flips are going to go my way sometimes and they're going to go against me other times.
Yeah, very quickly, Rob Pizzola, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with Drew here. I mean, sometimes news is going to work against you. Sometimes it's going to work in your favor. And the reality is it's a very competitive marketplace. If I'm going to wait till later in the week to bet a team because their quarterback is not taking is not vaccinated or not taking proper precautions or whatever, then I'm at risk of losing that number to someone else. So at the end of the day, it's a competitive marketplace. I'm going to fire whenever I can based off the information that I have. And yeah, it's going to be frustrating at times, but I mean, hopefully it works in my favor just as much as it works against me.
All right, good to hear. Yeah, I'm looking for a bit of advice myself, so you've given it there. Thanks for that, guys. Appreciate it. Don't forget, if you're new to the show this year and you are enjoying the content, or if you're even newer or you were here last year, check out our YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up and a subscribe. Or if you're listening to us on the podcast, even a preferential review would be pretty nice. Brand new sign-up offer as well, exclusively for our podcast audience. Nobody else can get this. Bet 20, get 20, and use the bonus code NFL20 when signing up at matchbook.com. Like I said, nobody else gets this. Nobody at all gets it. They just don't. It's for our audience and nobody else. All right, gents, let's take it off. First game we're looking at, Cleveland Browns at the Kansas City Chiefs. Suma, I'm going to come to you first because you love your selection in this one. Let's take a look at the betting as we have it. The Browns, you can back in the money line at 3.3. Kansas City Chiefs at 1.41. The Browns are getting a 6-point start on the main handicap, 1.97, and 54.5 is the total, and that's slightly juiced towards the over at 1.91. So I don't know if this is the exact number you like this total at. You want to play the over here. It's 54.5. I did look at that, and it did look kind of high, but make the case anyway. Why is there going to be points aplenty at Arrowhead on Sunday evening?
Yeah, so first of all, disclaimer, I personally took over 53. I would like it a lot at 54 still, and if you put a gun to my head at 54.5, I would still take the over because I'm seeing lots of points in this one. I think that both offenses might even be a little bit underrated, if that makes sense. The Browns were a top 10 offense last year, despite playing 3 games in 30 plus miles per hour of wind. They didn't have any single starting wide receiver against the Jets, and they still were a top 10 offense by EPA per play and DVOA. I think they were 9th in DVOA and 4th or 5th in EPA per play. and they are returning all 5 offensive linemen. Jedrick Wills is heading into year 2. We usually observe a uptick in performance for offensive tackles in year 2, so that offensive line might be even better this year. And they're getting Odell Beckham back. And last season, even though they were highly efficient, they lacked that speed element, that guy that can take a slant to the house. They had no one who could stretch the field deep. Now they have Odell Beckham back. He's going to play in week 1. They drafted Anthony Schwartz, very underrated receiver, because he brings a necessary speed element to that offense. I think they took him in the 3rd round. I wouldn't be surprised to see him playing like 20 snaps this week. And overall, I don't have any reason to assume that the Browns won't have a offense that could reach potential top 5 efficiency again. And on the other side, with the Chiefs, I don't need to lose many words about the Chiefs offense, but I still want to address some things, because what they did in the offseason, they were saying, hey, we got crushed in the Super Bowl because we had like 3 backup offensive linemen playing, and we need to address that issue. They are coming back with 5 new offensive line starters, but what's really interesting is that they are completely changing their style in the trenches, because for the past couple of years, they were a zone running team. They used a lot of RPOs of that zone run game, and now they have like 5 big maulers. Joe Thuney is maybe the best pulling guard in the league. Orlando Brown comes from a power scheme. Then they took Creed Humphrey, who has been a phenomenal gap scheme blocker at Oklahoma. Trey Smith was a 2nd round talent for some guys, and they are going to switch to the gap scheme on the ground, and they will also use a lot of RPOs of that gap running scheme, where we are going to see some pulling guards like Joe Thuney pulling, then Patrick Mahomes keeps the ball and throws a quick slant. I think that's going to put a lot of stress on opposing defenses. And last season, the Chiefs had one major issue, and that was converting short downs. They were like the 1st or 2nd best team when it comes to long 3rd downs, because Patrick Mahomes is awesome. But when it comes to 3rd and 4th and short, they were like 18th, 20th in EPA per play. They just had tremendous issue converting short downs. And they were also like, I think, 22nd in EPA per play at the goal line when they had to just punch it over. So their offensive line couldn't get a good push up front for, like, let's say 1 or 2 yards, so that CH could just run and convert a 1st down. And this year, they have that offensive line. They have the offensive line to convert short downs. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see let's say a record-breaking season from the Chiefs offense in Patrick Mahomes' career. And if we combine anything, I just don't see how we don't see a shootout this week. I'm also not very high on the Browns defense. They have like 7 or 8 starters, but they're very young at their secondary. Greg Newsome hasn't played an NFL snap yet. The same goes for Grant Delpit. Their linemaking corps is weak, so they might get fooled by Andy Reid on RPOs for like 60 minutes. And overall, I just don't see a lot of scenarios where I would be comfortable backing the under here. I can easily see the Chiefs going into the 30s, and the Browns have the defense to go toe-to-toe with them. I mean, the Browns, their best case scenario is probably jumping a lead early and then leaning on the run game and their elite offensive line to get this one home, but it just won't work against Patrick Mahomes. Even if the Chiefs struggle at the beginning, they have all the talent in the world to score 3 or 4 touchdowns very quickly. And I see a lot more scenarios where this game goes into the late 50s or even early 60s.
Suma coming out swinging, Rob Pizzola. I think he took a lot of the good points here for the over in general, covered it in depth in a major way. But I think you're leaning the over. You're maybe not as confident here, but would you get to the edge of 54.5? It is a lot.
It's a big number. And at the end of the day, I agree with everything Suma said from an X's and O's perspective, right? You look at what Patrick Mahomes did last year. He had a 323 EPA per play in the regular season, and that was behind a shoddy O-line. I can only imagine when that O-line gets corrected, what he's going to be able to do. So I think there's going to be points. The issue for me early in the season, especially this year, is that we don't really know what the scoring environment is going to be in the NFL this year. So when we look back to last year, there was an average of 49.6 points per game. in the NFL a season ago. That was up a full 4 points from the previous year. And in fact, that was 2.4 points higher than any other season in NFL history. So we had a huge outlier season last year in terms of scoring. And if the scoring environment's going to be the same this year, then yes, I have no problem getting behind an over at 54.5. I'm just not sure that that's going to be the case because we're going to insert crowd noise again on defense. And on top of that, we don't know that the game is going to be called the same way. There was a drastic decrease in offensive holding penalties last year. So I lean to the over. I'm not looking to get involved in totals in week one unless I think it's a substantial edge for the reasons that I mentioned about the uncertainty around the scoring environment. But from a pure X's and O's perspective, it's very hard to make an argument for the under here.
Drew Dinsick, I'm not totally sure you have a massive opinion on the total there, but you do like the Browns. Look, the main line we quoted there a while ago was 6, but there's plenty of 6.5 at 1.91. If you're picking the side, the Browns with the points is the way to go for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised these guys are looking at the over here. The Browns did draft JOK, who is the Travis Kelce stopper. So in seriousness, though, the over makes a ton of sense. You have two offenses that are absolutely capable of scoring 30 points on any given outing, and realistically, they both have very solid matchups the way they would like to attack each other. So I do think this is going to be a higher scoring affair. I think Suma grabbed an absolutely smash of a number, so great bet by you. And as I look at this matchup in particular, I'm hopeful that, Kevin Stefanski kind of learned some of the lessons of last year's playoff loss to the Chiefs, where he was not very aggressive late in that game. And I hope he does not take his foot off the gas here if the Browns do get out to a lead, because I do think the Browns are live for this upset here. This is going to be, in my opinion, the preview of the AFC Championship game. I realistically think these are your two best teams in the AFC. Bills are certainly in that conversation, but I do have some questions about, what they've done, if they've done enough really to help kind of elevate what we saw from them last year, or if it's just going to be sort of running back and then teams will ultimately get enough tape on them that they'll have some answers for them come playoff time. But realistically, this Browns defense is going to be good by the end of the season. I have high confidence in that because I love the additions that they made in their secondary. And they're going to have an absolute beast of a pass rush if Clowney can stay on the field. So this is a team that will get better and will be a better team to lay the points with later in the season. But I don't see them coming out with in a week one where Andy Reid has had an entire offseason to innovate his offense. And pitch an impressive defensive performance here and keep the Chiefs in check. All that said, 6.5 points is what I played in this for the Browns, and realistically, I just can't get there. I can't get close to that actually in terms of a power number rating. I would have to give the Chiefs about 4 points of home field advantage, and yes, there'll be fans in Arrowhead for the first time in a long time, and that will surely impact the performance of the Chiefs. We've seen it in every other sport, at least as fans have been reintroduced. However, I still think this Browns team is good enough to go toe-to-toe, and this comes down to being a one-score game for me. I have a little bit of action on the money line here for the Browns to pull off the upset, and I've bet into a lot of Browns futures at this point, and a lot of my thinking was if the Browns can come out and steal this game, they can set themselves up because the schedule starts out for them pretty soft after this contest. And so this is a high leverage spot for them. Meanwhile, the Chiefs have to play the Ravens and the Bills still in weeks 2 and 5, respectively. They get the Chargers in week 3. So a little bit of a tough start here for the Chiefs. And I think the Browns are allowed to pull off the upset.
Drew, just in the Browns before we come off this game, you said you bet a lot of them in the futures. Anything holding you back with Baker Mayfield? Is that not enough of a kind of risk, or is it purely you're playing it at the number at the moment?
Yeah, my decision making on playing the Browns for the futures market was not even expecting Baker Mayfield to take a meaningful step forward. I think if you get a repeat performance from him from last season, combined with the good coaching, combined with the offensive weapons they have now, combined with the defense being not being a liability, which it was last year, and they still got a playoff win out of it. So I think I think of all the teams in the NFL that kind of approached the offseason, the Browns did the most impressive job, in my opinion, of rostering a team that can compete in 2021 NFL.
All right, we have a bit of division in the other games. I know, looking ahead at our notes here. So let's lock in 2 plays for this one. We'll take the Browns plus 6.5 at 1.91. Currently at Matchbook.com, and over 54.5 at 1.92. That game is obviously on live on Sky Sports as well on Sunday night. And pretty new addition this year is insights.matchbook.com. We will have a full recap of all of these bets, about 2 or 3 hours post-recording as well. So I know sometimes these recordings can be about 50 minutes long, so sometimes you might miss them, but check out insights.matchbook.com for further details of those. All right, next game, Steelers-Bills. Actually a good one in Buffalo on Sunday night. Drew, I'll start with you first, but let's take a look at the betting as we have it currently at matchbook.com. You can back the Steelers here at 3.45 on the money line. The Bills at 1.39. The Steelers getting a 6.5 point start at even money at 2.0 here, and 48.5 is the total, slightly shaded towards the unders. A lot of people like Buffalo this season, Drew, but you like the Pittsburgh Steelers in this spot, getting 6.5. It's been a while, I'd say, since they're getting this kind of start.
Yeah, and this is an interesting contest because this goes against my read on both of these teams over the balance of the season, but I think it's important to separate a week one matchup from the way that you feel about how a team will do in terms of overachieving, underachieving. The Bills are an absolute truck. They are going to score a lot of points this season. They are going to be a very, very fun team to back in certain games. I will happily walk to the window and lay up to 14 points with the Bills against the likes of the Jets when they're going up against a team that doesn't have any kind of a semblance of a pass defense. They are going to score 40 points, and it's going to be an absolute blowout win. They have one of the best coaching. I think they have the best coach offensive coordinator combination in the league between McDermott and Brian Daboll, and they have one of the best quarterback wide receiver combos in the league with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. So this is absolutely a fun team to go to war with. But I do think the Steelers are being wildly disrespected by the market, at least early in the season. You remember very fondly, I'm sure we were all on the podcast together talking Bills Steelers last year, and it was a 2-point game in Buffalo. And yes, there were no fans, and yes, the market hadn't entirely absorbed how good Buffalo was at that time, but the Steelers were limping into that game. Roethlisberger's arm was hanging on by a thread. The defense was missing like 5 pieces, and now you're coming in at full strength. And you're coming in with an offensive approach that we are not really sure what we're going to get yet. And in a lot of senses, in week one, I think kind of betting into the uncertainty of what you're going to get from an offense is to your advantage if you're looking for points or if you're looking to try to back an underdog that that can surprise and compete. And so I think just because of the new looks you're going to get out of this Steelers offense, this is going to be a higher scoring game. This is going to be a very competitive contest. And I think the likes of the strength overall and just the talent in the front seven for Pittsburgh is going to make it a little bit more challenging for the Bills really to find their footing offensively in this one. And I think that gives the Steelers a puncher's chance.
Suma, I don't think you've got a massive opinion on this. I think you're slightly leaning on the Bills, but anything kind of jumping out at you in terms of the number here, the 6.5, is about right for you?
It's about right. I think I'm exactly at 6.5. I'm probably a little bit lower on Pittsburgh than Drew because I don't think I'm lower on the Bills. I think if I had to make a case for the Steelers, I would come up with an imagination of what this offense could be in week one, because I just don't know how that whole system is going to work out with Matt Canada as the new offensive coordinator. He is supposed to bring lots of motion, lots of play action, lots of pistol running game. And they have a bottom 3 offensive line, in my opinion. So it's really tough to get a good read on what this offense can be in week one. I have a low prior on them. They can absolutely prove me wrong and come out firing, but I really have to see it first. And I know what I'm getting from the Bills. This is once again a top-notch passing attack with one of the smartest coaches in the league, as Drew has mentioned. And the Steelers have a great defensive line, maybe the best in the league, but I think they are a little bit soft on their secondary. So the way to attack them is probably with a quick strike passing game. And if you remember the preseason game from the Bears against the Bills played against the Bears starters, or most of the Bears starters, for like 1, 2, or 3 series, and Mitch Trubisky absolutely torched them with most of his starters, where Brian Daboll just spread the defense out for wide receivers, and then Trubisky could dink and dunk his way into the end zone. I think that's the way to beat the Steelers defense, and the Bills have the perfect equipment to do so. So if I had to take the Steelers, I would need more confidence in Ben Roethlisberger and this offense. It's a stay away for me, but gun to my head, I would probably go with the Bills at 6.5.
Yeah, I personally have big doubts on this Matt Canada effect. If you saw some of these offenses at LSU, I don't really see what the big deal. Of course, he's loved in Pittsburgh because he was OC at the Pittsburgh Panthers. Rob, what do you think of this one? It's a kind of a tricky one as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think to echo some of what Drew said, I'm higher than the market is on the Bills going into the year, and I'm much lower on the Steelers, but I'm still coming in and around what this point spread is right there. So I think there's a little bit of inflation in week one, and I think you can understand why someone would like to take Pittsburgh in this spot getting these points. The problem for me is that I don't really love the matchup for the Steelers in general. Obviously, we're going to have to monitor the status of TJ Watt, who could potentially be holding out for a contract here, because if the Steelers are without TJ Watt, Stephon Tuitt's already on IR, they lost Bud Dupree in free agency. I just don't see how they're going to get home against Josh Allen. I think it's just one of those where Allen's going to have a bunch of time and he's going to be able to pick this defense apart, kind of like what Suma was saying. So that to me is a key injury. And in fact, if Watt is out, I would very much consider playing the Bills at 6.5. I'm sure that would move if that was the case. So now it becomes a question of whether or not the Steelers can score to match the Bills. And I think there's some good points being made about the new offense that they're running there. But the offensive line to me is horrible. They've lost 4 starters from last year. They're starting a rookie at left tackle. They're starting a rookie at center. They bring in Trey Turner, who's a veteran, who was actually absolutely horrible last year as well. So I just don't see how the Steelers continuously push the ball downfield. I think what teams will do is play them very similarly to what they did in the latter half of last year, where they kind of stack the line of scrimmage. They force the Steelers to beat them deep, and I just don't think Roethlisberger is going to have the time to do that. Now, with that said, the Bills don't exactly have a great pass rush either, so maybe there is an opportunity in this specific game. I'm not really sure, but overall, I just wouldn't feel comfortable getting less than a touchdown in this spot. I do think Buffalo is going to score pretty easily in this game, and that's not a knock on the Steelers' defense. It's just, I guess, more of a compliment to the Bills' offense in general, because I do think Pittsburgh's defense is going to be pretty solid this year. But overall, to me, I make this number 6.5. If I had to pick it, I am picking the Bills, and I'm monitoring the status of TJ Watt. Hopefully he doesn't play, and I can get a bet in on the Bills.
I guess you want to jump back into it.
I'll jump back in, and I just want to make a couple comments about the offense. So, is the Matt Canada, Ben Roethlisberger marriage going to last all season in a positive way? No. At some point, Ben Roethlisberger is who he is, and he's going to do what he wants to do. But if there's a chance that you get any of the wrinkles that I think are plus CV about how you want to run offense in the NFL today, it's going to be early in the season. Well, at least, you'll see some of that, some of those elements, I believe, in the game plan here early. I think it'll come unwound as you go through the season, but at least early in the season, I don't mind backing the Steelers at all. They're going to be a beautiful fade down the stretch. Don't get me wrong. We will go through many podcasts later this season where we will be beating the drum that can you possibly believe the Steelers are favored in this spot? We will get there. The other element that I want to bring up is that the way that the Bills play defense is a little unique in that they invite you to run. Right? They unload the box. They say, "Oh yeah, no, come on, give us your best run. We're going to take the ball out of the quarterback's hands to a degree." And the fact that they have a very talented running back who they just spent first round capital drafting, again, long term mistake, short term in this game. Probably an advantage that they have somebody with fresh legs that they can give the rock 25 times in this spot. I think Najee Harris is going to have a fine game against these guys. I think they're going to be able to move the ball relatively effectively. And if they're efficient in the red zone, I think the Steelers are live to get the upset. The fascinating thing to me, at least, and to come back on Rob's point, which was really, I thought, pretty sharp about the potential holdout of TJ Watt. I was nervous about that too. And then I saw this total crash from 51.5 to 48. So somebody out there has relatively high confidence that you're going to get a full strength Steelers defense because, realistically, if I hear any rumblings that Watt may not play, that's bombs away on 48.5. Do you agree, Rob?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I get that. There's a lot of different angles you can take to look at this game. I think you pointed out one that was interesting, Drew, which was we go back to December of last year, which is not too long ago. And I know that myself and Suma liked the Bills in that game, but the market settled on something like -2, right?
Yeah,
-1.5,
yeah.
-2 is the closer. And we're looking at a much different spread. And there really haven't been that many games in between, and there really haven't been a ton of changes for the Bills in the offseason. Maybe the Steelers' O-line got worse in general. So it's like one of those things where, do I grab what is the perceived market value, or do I kind of trust the instinct? And I really felt that was a bad matchup for the Steelers at the time. And it proved to be like they couldn't score in that game. I think the final's 26-15, but the Pittsburgh couldn't really move the ball. And maybe that variance is working in their favor, or that unknown with the new type of offense is working in their favor this year, and the Bills come in and they expect to see something similar to last season. But all in all, I don't know. I just think the Bills are a juggernaut this year. I think people tend to underrate their defense as well. I'm not saying this is like a top 5 defense by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of the rushing issues that they had last year were when Matt Milano was injured. He's now back in the lineup. They kind of shored up that run defense in this latter half of the year. I just really struggle to see a scenario where Pittsburgh is matching scores with them. Now, you don't need to match scores in the NFL. You can get a late backdoor cover. There's all sorts of other scenarios to cover a 6.5 point spread, right? But ultimately, to me, that line value, I think we just know so much more about these teams now than we did in December last year, where I think the market has adjusted to the proper number, which is so weird to say because you'd almost never, ever see Pittsburgh getting 6.5 points. It actually still looks weird seeing it, but I just think that this could be the year where the wheels completely fall off this team.
All right. Well, I was patient. I waited and waited and waited all summer to get a 7. I got it. I don't think it's going back to 7. If anything happens between now and game day, I could see it coming down to 6 here before we get to kickoff. So if you're playing the market that way, unless there's TJ Watt news, I would expect that this trends towards 6 and that the total, if anything, starts to tick back up from 48 to 48.5. So we'll move on here and talk a little bit about Dolphins Patriots, which is a fascinating matchup because, of course, we have the debut of Mac Jones, the much ballyhooed now front runner for offensive rookie of the year. I guess I'll kick it to you first here, Rob. The Dolphins and the Patriots, obviously, a divisional matchup week 1 is always a little weird, don't you think?
I think it is. I look at the total of the game. I see 43.5, and to me, that's like a low variance type of game. It's a very low total, but I actually think that this is one of the games this week that has such a wide range of outcomes because of the lack of experience at quarterback for both of these teams. And Tua looked great in the preseason. A lot of his success actually came against opposing starters. So I could see the optimism heading into the year for Miami. They lose Will Fuller to suspension for the first game of the season, but still a lot of good weapons there. And that's kind of balanced out by no Stephon Gilmore for New England in this game. But it's still very hard for me to ignore how much Tua struggled last season. And I don't think we can completely discount that because he looked good in preseason this year. When you look back to last year, there are 33 quarterbacks in the league that played at least 300 snaps. He was 28th out of those 33 in EPA per play, finishing behind guys like Andy Dalton and Nick Mullins, even Cam Newton as well. So I'm not saying Tua is going to be a bust, but I can't just automatically value him as some great quarterback because he showed some flashes in preseason. I think we're more likely to see the Tua from last year than we are the one from preseason. But on the opposite end, you get all that uncertainty as well with Mac Jones, and everybody seems to be in on the Mac Jones train right now. There's a lot of optimism, and he looked fine in preseason. But again, if I had $1 for every quarterback that looked fine in the preseason and then crapped the bed in the regular season, I'd have a lot of money right now because it happens every single year. So I'm not just going to jump all in on Mac Jones. And with all this uncertainty in the game, I think that there's one thing that is somewhat of a certain factor, and that's Bill Belichick against a young quarterback. And I know it's kind of overplayed in the NFL, and it's probably not it's not to the extent that people think it is. But if you look at the NFL landscape right now, 17 of the quarterbacks that are going to start in week 1 went up against Bill Belichick in the first or second season of their career. And those quarterbacks have only won 5 games. And when you look at some of those quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Ben Roethlisberger, those were great quarterbacks earlier in their career. The other 2 happened last year, Drew Lock and Tua Tagovailoa. The difference was that their defenses won them those games. You look at what the Patriots did in those games offensively, 10 points and 12 points. So to me, this is very much, I do think the Patriots are going to be able to shut down the Dolphins offense in some way. It's a matter of whether they can score enough. I do think Mac Jones this year is probably an upgrade to what we saw from Cam Newton last year. Again, a lot of uncertainty, but I think more often than not, the Patriots are able to put up enough points in this game to cover the spread. And not in love with the -3. Certainly would like to get a -2.5. But if you're looking at -3 in the +100 type of range, I think the Patriots are playable for a small play.
Okay, I don't hate that at all either. And in fact, it's fascinating what has happened with this line, where you've seen it tick up from 2.5 to 3 on the news of Mac Jones, and you've seen the total come crashing down. So I'm not sure if the market is necessarily expecting a more conservative game plan, or if exactly your point was, folks are circling this one as a Belichick versus Tua. Advantage Belichick, which is, obviously. I guess, Suma, I'll ask you a quick question, though, about the Patriots defense, because I'll be honest, I like the over here. I think the over is the right side. I thought the over was the right side the minute we heard the Mac Jones news. And, oh, by the way, it was, hey, we cut Cam Newton. Mac Jones is a starter. Oh, and Stephon Gilmore's on the pup. And honestly, there was a lot of questions I had about this Patriots secondary coming into the season. They invested all of this, resources on the defensive line. That was kind of a head-scratching move, and I guess I feel like this team can be passed on, assuming you can keep Tua upright behind pretty suspect line. Do I have a fair read there, or do you think this is a game that's going to be dictated by Patriots defense?
Yeah, I would lean towards the latter, to be honest. I think the Dolphins are one of 3 or maybe 4 teams in week 1 that have an absolute nightmare matchup in the trenches on both sides of the ball. The Dolphins offensive line probably 32nd in the league right now. Now they have Austin Jackson on the COVID list, and they might just throw their second-round rookie in there. The Patriots have completely boosted their front 7. I think Bill Belichick will absolutely terrorize Tua Tagovailoa all game long. Will Fuller is not going to play. He's still suspended until week 2, I guess. Devontae Parker was dealing with a minor injury. I think he has missed some practices. And I don't really see how the Dolphins want to develop a deep passing game in week 1 against that gruesome front 7, where Belichick is going to throw so many stuff at Tua. And I think that the Dolphins will try to get some quick strikes, get Myles Gaskin involved against some of the linebackers, get Mike Gesicki rolling, maybe Jalen Waddle with tons of yards after the catch opportunities. But I think I still like the offensive matchup for the Patriots a little bit more, because they have like a top 3, top 5 offensive line. The Dolphins defensive line is still not really good at all. I think they might just run all over them. And on the other side, also the Pats have 2 really good tight ends now with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, and I think that's the way to attack the Dolphins, because you can't come out in 11 personnel and try to throw against those cornerbacks. I think the Patriots will come out in tons of 12 personnel and throw quick passes to Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, try to get the run game going, use lots of play action, and really try to match up their tight ends against those linebackers. And overall, I think that the Dolphins have the Patriots have a slightly better matchup offensively, but I'm also struggling to find many touchdowns in this game.
Okay, interesting. Chalk this up to confirmation bias, but what I heard when you were talking about the Miami offense was a lot of, we don't really know what to expect, which is true. Yeah. And again, in the same sort of sense, there's going to be some uncertainty there. There could be an element of surprise. And if Granted, if they roll out and expect to do a deep passing attack behind that offensive line, then I can tear up my over ticket in quarter one. But ultimately, I completely agree with you that the Patriots offense should be very, very solid. In fact, not just in this game, but over the early portion of this season, that is a bet on unit in general. This is a very low total now, sitting at 43 and a half, depending on where you're shopping. And realistically, every time the Patriots are in the red zone, their offensive line and the strength of their tight end and running back room right now is so great that I'm not worried about Patriots finding the touchdowns as opposed to field goals. And really, you have an element of two young quarterbacks and the potential for some turnovers and short fields on top of all of this. It's obviously it's no secret, it's no surprise the Miami Dolphins defense got it done with turnovers last year, and that's not repeatable, but it is at least an element in this handicap as far as the total goes. So over 43 and a half is on my card.
Yeah, guys, apologies. I went missing for a while. Just one of those things. Thanks for keeping it going, Drew. So I'm going to turn off my camera here. A lot of people would say that's a good thing, of course. Where do we lie on that one? So, guys, are we taking the Pats, or what was the general consensus?
I don't have any problem supporting the Pats, particularly if we see a 2.5. But so far to this point, all I've played is the over 43.5.
Okay, all right, good to know. Prior to that, I'm thinking with the previous game, the Bills. I don't think there was enough of a bet there either. But stay tuned. There's a lot of bets in the any other bets section towards the end of the show. All right, let's look at the Bears and Rams Sunday Night Football in LA. Moneyline currently, you can back the Bears at 4.0. The Rams are 1.3. The Bears getting a 7.5 point start at 1.97, and 47.5 is the total, shaded towards the under. Drew, you said you played the under, but at a bad number. So what were you looking at? I'm guessing so 46.5. 47 is obviously very key.
I typed that yesterday when it was a bad number. Now it's an atrocious number. now this is embarrassing. It's getting embarrassing at this point. I was going to come and just, laugh. We were going to have, Suma and I bet Rob probably too, we're going to have a good laugh about the over in the Jets Panthers and how much CLV there was there, but it's all canceled by this one. And honestly, I've been struggling. I've been asking around. I don't understand this angle at all. Why total has been bet up from, we saw it bottom at about 44, and now it's at 47.5. And the only thing I can think is there may be some inside information that the two defensive tackles for the Bears may not be going. I mean, there's been a lot of questions swirling about Hicks and Goldman this year and whether these guys were going to hold out and, the degree to which they were even healthy and interested in playing. And, if you're missing those two pieces, then this becomes a Rams pick the score kind of a game. Realistically, the Bears have a pass rush in Khalil Mack, and then they have some solid front four overall if those guys are all in the field. But their back, their secondary can be exposed for sure. And we've had an entire offseason now of the Sean McVay, Matt Stafford love affair, which is getting gross at this point. Realistically, the Rams are not a team that I think is properly rated by the market overall, but neither are the Bears. These are two teams that I have very low confidence ultimately, make their season expected wins. And they happen to be playing in prime time in LA. And, the matchup that's going to get talked about the most is Aaron Donald against the 32nd or 31st best offensive line in the NFL, which is potentially going to be a problem for Andy Dalton, who does not perform well under pressure. And, oh, by the way, Andy Dalton happens to have one target that he tends to, he doesn't work through his progressions especially well. He keys on one guy, that'll be Allen Robinson likely, and Robinson can get covered by Ramsey. So, the sort of the weak links in the Rams defense, I don't think are going to be, exposed much in this one. And I think the Rams can, keep the Bears well under 20 points, which is what they would have to be to get this total to 47.5. I'm absolutely shocked that the market thinks the Bears can score 20 points in this game, to be honest.
What do you think, Rob? I think you were in potentially a first half angle.
Yeah, so I kind of agree. I don't agree with this move just in general. So I echo Drew's sentiment on there. And again, I'm not in love with week 1 totals for the reasons I mentioned earlier on, especially this year with the scoring environment. What scares the living daylights out of me if I'm going to be backing the under in this game is the potential of seeing Justin Fields in the second half or potentially at halftime. And I've seen this play out many, many times in the NFL before, where the Rams have spent 2 weeks preparing for Andy Dalton, all of a sudden maybe get Justin Fields for a quarter or a half because they're winning the game comfortably, and Fields moves the ball at will because they just can't adjust to him in that period of time. Because of that, I've actually marked the Bears as a team that I'm really not interested in playing full game totals on, but I don't mind the first half under here just in general, because I don't think this is actually a great matchup for the Bears offense, partly because they don't have a quarterback. But the Rams defense, to me, while it was overrated last year and they did have a pretty soft schedule and they lose Staley to the Chargers, I still think that they are going to be able to control that Bears offense overall. On the other side of things, the Bears defense, to me, you look at it on paper, you see a lot of good names. They're really thin at corner. I do think that they're going to get exposed by Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp in this game, but I also don't think it's necessarily going to be down the field. I think this is one of those offenses where the Rams are going to do a lot of things laterally. They're going to try to get these guys, get the ball in their hands pretty quickly, beat the cornerbacks who are historically poor tacklers there as well. So I would look at the first half angle if I'm looking at the under here, and I think it was 23 when I was looking at it yesterday, but the total's been moved up even more, so you probably get a 23.5, maybe even a 24 in this spot. That's where I would be looking. But overall, I do agree with Drew. If Dalton plays the whole game, I don't see Chicago scoring enough to put this game over the total. I think the Rams get an early lead. They probably grind it out, start to run the ball a little bit, slow things down, try to win the game as comfortably as they can. In terms of side, zero opinions on this game. This is going to be that the Sunday night chase special, right? Where the books are desperately going to need the Bears because everyone's either going to press their winnings in the afternoon on the Rams or they're going to chase their losses on the Rams. And there's going to be a ton of Rams teasers just in general. I don't buy into that public stuff, but the line seems right to me. First half under is where I would look, but I echo a lot of what Drew has said for this game.
Yeah, Suma, Rob touched on it there. I think there'll be plenty of people at Matchbook.com doing their ACCAs and multiples for the red zone and whatever else. This is one you feel, though, if you put the Rams in, it's going to get up. They're 1.3, they're short, but it's a nice one to juice up another bet.
Yes, absolutely. If you have a sports book with, let's say, minus 110 teasers, or a sports book that allows minus 110 wrong teasers or advantage teasers, so to speak, I love the Rams as a teaser leg. I have bet some open teasers with the Rams. I might close it with a game from this week's slate, or maybe I just leave it open to pair it with another game in the future. But I just don't really see a lot of scenarios in which the Bears are able to win this one straight up. So I would guess that you have to plug in Justin Fields at halftime, and he lights the world on fire. He scrambles away from Aaron Donald all the time and throws some bombs down the field because, as Rob said, I think that the Bears might have a very, very bad cornerback group. And when the Rams come out in 11 personnel, it's an easy matchup to move the ball against that secondary, in my opinion. So I think the spread is fair. I think I have that game as Rams -8. I think that's completely fine, but I just can't see the Bears with Andy Dalton behind the Patriot offensive line move the ball enough to win this one straight up. So I really love the Rams as a teaser leg.
All right. Okay. Yeah, not totally sure if I'm going to have a bet in that after listening to that. That's okay. It's week 1, bank balance management. There's a long season there yet. Don't forget, you can check out Suma's got a pick up early this season on insights.matchbook.com. Winning season last week, Suma. You were in early with your copy on Wednesday morning. This guy is firing on the market, so check that out. We won't be covering that here, but it is available on insights.matchbook.com. Any other bet section? Rob Pizzola, I'll come to you first here. Like the Cardinals +3.
Yeah, I like the Cards. I mean, I feel like we're talking a lot about the Arizona cornerback situation because it's bad. And yes, you got Julio and A.J. Brown on the other side. But I'm not convinced the Titans offense is going to fire on all cylinders without Arthur Smith there. We've seen time and time again in the NFL what play calling can do for an offense. And there's countless examples I can think of just from last year alone. Baker Mayfield would be one just in general with how he progressed. But for those who want to rag on the Cardinals defense, I think we've forgotten how bad the Titans defense is just in general. And I don't think the Titans defense is going to be good. I think they could potentially be a bottom 5 unit in the NFL this year. They have matchup problems all over the field against the Arizona wide receivers. So to me, yes, you got a little bit of home field advantage, but personally, I just don't see much separating these two teams. I think Kyler Murray can spread the field against this Tennessee defense just in general, and I don't think that they have an answer for DeAndre Hopkins and A.J. Green and Christian Kirk. So I just think that this is a mispriced game. You're getting the 3, which is a key number in the NFL. I probably would have lined this around Tennessee -1. So to me, I think that's just great line value for this weekend.
Yeah, Arizona +3 currently available at 1.9 at Matchbook. Let's definitely put that in as our third selection on the slate. Drew Dinsick, Jets. I think it may be a best bet for somebody else later on the show. But first of all, make the case for why are we backing the Jets this weekend?
Oh, well, I guess I'll take I have that over. I don't know that I'm going to take the points in the Jets. I'll let somebody else make that case. But I wanted to comment real quickly on the Art Smith. Art Smith's loss for the Tennessee Titans. I agree 100% with Rob. That's going to matter. Art Smith's gain for the Atlanta Falcons. That's going to matter. And realistically, this total sitting at 48 is one of the more head-scratching numbers on the board for me. I think your Falcons offense, matches up extremely well with this Philadelphia defense. The Philadelphia secondary, not great. And realistically, if you can get any kind of, if you get, league average pass pro for Matt Ryan in this offense, they're going to score into the 30s here. And, Jalen Hurts, while he has his limitations, clearly, I think this offense for the Philadelphia Eagles has enough weapons and enough multiple looks that they can give you in the passing game as well as, Hurts scrambling when the pocket breaks down and out of structure, he can be pretty dangerous on his feet. Philadelphia offense is a little underrated as well. So two offensive heavy teams against two very questionable defenses there, and a total under 50 is a perfect look for an over.
All right, Suma, go back to the well zone. The Chiefs game. You obviously like the total there, but team total with the Chiefs should be about 30.5. Working off those numbers at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's kind of correlated, but until the Chiefs face a really, really good defense, I don't think their team totals should necessarily be below 31. I think they have all the potential to score into the low 30s easily, and I really like team totals. I think 30.5 is widely available. I checked some legal sports books as well to get a consensus number. I think over 30.5 on the Chiefs, around -120, -125 is a pretty good team total to bet.
Yeah, like the angle that'll actually be available closer to kickoff at matchbook.com as well as the Sky Sports game. So hopefully our number holds. It may go up. Drew, what was the number in Atlanta that you played there for the total?
Yeah, let's go for over 48 there.
Yeah, like it. Yeah, over 48 in Atlanta. Okay. All right, some good selections there. Like I said, check out insights.matchbook.com to be a full recap of these selections about 2 or 3 hours after recording. Best bets time, week 1. Rob, I kind of gave the game away a while ago with the Jets. What's the story here? It's been a while since we've had the Jets in the best bets section. We most certainly didn't have them last year. They're getting 5.5 points at just under even money, 1.99 at matchbook.com at the moment.
I am prepared to look like an absolute moron coming out of the gate here in week 1 with the New York Jets. But how many opportunities am I going to get in life to take 5.5 points against Sam Darnold? I just don't think there's going to be that many personally. And I think we make so many excuses for Sam Darnold, right? Oh, he didn't have a great O-line. He didn't have great wideouts, didn't have a great coaching staff. We completely ignore the fact that there are so many other successful quarterbacks in the league that deal with a bad O-line or bad wideouts or bad coaching staff, and they're able to overcome it. Russell Wilson has done it for a decade. If you go back to 2018 when Sam Darnold entered the league, there's 27 quarterbacks who have played at least 1,000 plays. Darnold is dead last of those 27 quarterbacks in EPA per play. He is the only quarterback with a negative EPA per play, which is almost impossible to do in general. So I just don't have faith in Darnold magically finding another level because he's got better receivers and a better coaching staff. He still doesn't have a great offensive line. The Jets' strength on defense is their defensive line. They know Darnold pretty well from practicing against him for 3 years as well. So I don't think the Jets' defense is going to get steamrolled in this game. And then on the opposite side of things, I don't know if Zach Wilson's going to be good. I don't know if he's going to stink. What I do know is that the Jets have upgraded at wide receiver. They've upgraded their offensive line. They got absolutely miserable quarterback play last season. So to me, the likelihood of Wilson giving them worse quarterback play is very low. I'm just going to kind of embrace the variance here. But I think the Jets are a live underdog in this game. I'd play them plus 5.5 right now. I'd also play them on the money line. I think this is a game that they can win.
Yeah, I'm all for fading Sam Darnold. I've had 2 or 3 years with the Jets. I get it with him coming out of USC or whatever else, but yeah, no, you can only put so much on an O-line. Drew Dinsick, I think we covered it already in the first one, but your best bet is coming in Kansas City on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I've put my flag in this Cleveland Browns team, so it's put up against the best team in the league. Yeah, no, it's there's a lot to like in week 1, but the likelihood that the Browns, find some form in this game, I think, is pretty high. And 6.5 again is just too much of a gap between two teams that, outside of the quarterback position, are neck and neck, in my opinion, in terms of talent, in terms of in terms of coaching. So this is going to be a contest that comes down to the final score, and Cleveland is live, in my opinion. So I'll take Cleveland at 6.5.
6.5, 1.91 currently at Matchbook. Suma, top selection of week 1.
I wish Drew all the Browns points in the world.
Yeah, all of
I
them.
wish they would score 40, then my over would go through. So I'm taking the current market price in that game over 54.5.
Let's get like a classic, like Patriots Chiefs kind of game, 43-40. That seems does seem in the cards, honestly.
I would take it.
Yeah, absolutely. 1.92 come back over 54.5 at matchbook.com for Suma's top selection. Like I said, full recap of all those selections. We don't have too many, but that's week 1. And of course, my camera fell out early on, so I probably could have locked in another bet early on that. Insights.matchbook.com for a full recap of that. And if you do want to get involved with the action this weekend, bet 20, get 20. Use the code NFL20 when signing up at matchbook.com. We'll be back again next Wednesday. My thanks to Drew. My thanks to Rob. My thanks to Suma. Good to be back, gentlemen. Roll on the season.